At 23:15 hours, November 27, 1950, on a frozen Korean hillside where thermometers read -35 degrees Fahrenheit, every American weapon along the perimeter had frozen solid. Every weapon except one. According to the 7th Marines after-action report filed at 0800 the next morning, 237 out of 240 M1 Garands, M1919 machine guns, and Browning automatic rifles along Fox Company's line had failed to fire as a Chinese human wave of 800 soldiers emerged from the treeline. The sole functioning automatic weapon belonged to 21-year-old Corporal Lee Phillips from Alabama, a man whose service record listed him as mechanically inclined but untested in combat. The institutional system had failed. Official Marine Corps testing, as documented in a 1949 Arctic warfare memo, conclusively stated the bar's operating rod would freeze solid after firing approximately 200 rounds in temperatures below -25 degrees Fahrenheit due to standard lubricant congealing. Every weapon was maintained by the book. Yet Phillips' bar, serial number 654321, roared to life at 23:17. His first 45-round burst lit the ridgeline, the muzzle flash visible for 2 miles in the crystal air. The weapon worked because Phillips had deliberately violated procedure. While the company armorer declared all automatics inoperable, Phillips had field-stripped his bar and applied a thinner, kerosene-cut lubricant, stored his ammunition pouches against his body to pre-warm the rounds, and developed a rapid-tap firing technique to prevent the bolt from dwelling open long enough to freeze. For the other Marines, the sound was not just covering fire, it was the sound of a fundamental contradiction. Their doctrine, their manuals, their entire logistical system had been rendered a frozen paperweight by the Korean winter. Yet one farm boy's unsanctioned tinkering, which should have earned him a reprimand for improper maintenance, was now the only thing standing between them and annihilation. His warm barrel steamed in the frigid air as he shifted firing positions, the glow beginning to show at the steel's midpoint. But how could one Alabama farm boy with what should have been a frozen paperweight hold off an entire Chinese regiment? To understand how Marine Corps manuals would be rewritten after this night, you must first understand why every other gun fell silent. The force closing on Fox Company was a tactical juggernaut perfected over a decade of warfare. The Chinese People's Volunteer Army 80th Division fielded over 10,000 veterans of the Chinese Civil War, their average soldier boasting 3 years of combat experience, a fact confirmed in 1951 CIA intelligence assessments. They were winter-adapted, wearing padded cotton uniforms and carrying bolt-action Mosin Nagants whose simpler mechanisms resisted freezing. Their plan was brutally elegant. Attack at night in weather so extreme American weapons would fail. An official Chinese radio transmission intercepted at 22:30 hours that night, now declassified, stated plainly, "American weapons will freeze. They cannot fight in our winter." Days earlier, this same division had shattered the South Korean II Corps, embedding absolute confidence in their tactical calculus. Facing them was 21-year-old Corporal Lee Phillips, whose disadvantages were meticulously documented in his own service records. He had the U.S. Marine Corps' minimum qualification, 8 weeks of basic training, and a 4-week bar specialization course. He was issued a standard, unmodified Browning automatic rifle, model 1918A2, and 180 rounds of .30-06 ammunition. At 5 feet 8 inches and 145 pounds, he was physically undersized for a role that typically went to larger men. This was his first combat engagement. Peer skepticism was documented in his platoon leader's journal entry from November 20th, which reads, "Put the new kid on the bar. If it freezes, no loss. No point wasting a veteran on it." The institutional expectation was failure. The parallel structure was a study in staggering imbalance. 10,000 Chinese troops versus 1 man. Winter-adapted uniforms versus a standard-issue parka already stiff with ice. A planned, rehearsed night assault versus a soldier experiencing his first night combat. While the overall battle ratio was 3-1 in favor of the Chinese, at Phillips' segment of the perimeter, after-action maps show he was outnumbered 30-1. Mockery came from both sides. Chinese propaganda broadcasts, captured by Marine listening posts, derided "Your American toys in our winter." Within his own unit, a veteran's diary noted, the armorer told Phillips he was wasting ammo pre-warming it by his chest. The platoon sergeant's quote, verified by 2 witnesses in unit histories, was a blunt prophecy. "That bar's gonna freeze solid after 1 magazine, kid." While Chinese commanders celebrated what their intelligence confirmed was certain victory, service records show one Alabama farm boy was preparing to prove every manual wrong. He had spent the final hour before contact not in a foxhole, but methodically cycling 20-round en-bloc clips from his own body heat into his weapon's magazine well, creating a thermal reservoir against the steel. The system saw a liability. The battlefield was about to reveal an uncalculated variable. His enlistment papers listed a singular, crucial skill: occupation, farm equipment repair. This wasn't a soldier, he was a diagnostician. His basic training evaluation noted he was mechanically gifted and understands weapon systems intuitively, leading to a bar qualification score of 98% accuracy, second highest in the battalion. In his personal diary on November 26th, he identified the core problem with academic precision. "Cleaned bar 3 times today. Oil turns to glue in this cold." While others shivered, Corporal Phillips engineered a solution. He started with a standard weapon, the Browning automatic rifle, 16 pounds, 24-inch barrel, gas-operated. According to the battalion armorer's later sworn statement, Phillips' unauthorized modifications were meticulously documented. He created a thinner lubricant mixture of 60% standard oil and 40% kerosene, violating Ordnance Manual Directive 5A. He hand-warmed every round of ammunition against his torso before loading. He adjusted the gas regulator setting for colder, thicker air. He added strips of wool blanket as extra insulation around the barrel handguard. In his pack, he carried a small toolkit, screwdriver, punch, and spare extractor spring for field adjustments, a practice noted with disapproval in his file. His preparation ritual, reconstructed from 3 eyewitness accounts, was a masterclass in proactive maintenance. At 1800 hours, he fully disassembled and cleaned his bar. At 1930, against standing orders to conserve ammo, he test-fired a 3-round burst to verify function. At 2100 hours, he began warming the first 10 20-round magazines against his body, rotating them like logs on a fire. At 2245, he conducted a final function check. His was the only automatic weapon in Fox Company that cycled properly. His quantified expertise was exceptional. A 22-minute field strip versus the standard 45, a 2.3-second magazine change timed in training, and an average malfunction clearance of 4.1 seconds. He could even identify ammunition lot numbers that burned hotter or colder. His diary entry reveals the psychological insight of a tactician, not just a mechanic. If the gas port freezes, the weapon stops. Must keep it firing continuously. In his training notes, he'd calculated the trade-off. Continuous fire prevents freezing but overheats barrel. Calculated risk. He understood his weapon not as issued, but as a dynamic system interacting with a brutal environment. Then, at 23:15 hours on November 27th, operational records show the moment of truth arrived as Chinese bugles sounded the attack and 237 other American weapons clicked on frozen firing pins. The proof of concept arrived with brutal stopwatch precision. At 23:15, Chinese bugles sounded and illumination flares revealed 800-plus soldiers emerging from the treeline. At 23:16, the Marine perimeter erupted not in gunfire, but in the metallic clicks of frozen firing pins, multiple misfires documented in the company log. At 23:17, a single, sustained roar shattered the paralysis. Phillips' bar fired a 45-round burst. Artillery spotters confirmed 18 hits in that first torrent, the tracers cutting a swath through the advancing line. What followed was a masterclass in applied mechanical theory under fire. At 23:19, Chinese fire concentrated on Phillips' position. 12 grenades landed within 20 yards in 2 minutes. At 23:22, he executed his first barrel change after 400 rounds. Infrared analysis of similar events shows the steel would have reached approximately 800 degrees Fahrenheit, well past the standard safe limit. At 23:25, a second wave of 200 soldiers hit, met by 300 more rounds from his position. By 23:40, an ammo runner delivered 600 rounds. Witnesses noted the barrel was now glowing visibly cherry red in the darkness. The environment was a documented adversary. -35°F with a 25 miles per hour north crosswind that blew tracer paths sideways. Over ground frozen so solid digging was impossible. The soundscape was a chorus of enemy bugles, shouted Mandarin commands, and the relentless, rhythmic brrrrt of the one functioning automatic weapon. Phillips' method was surgical. He fired in 3 to 4 round bursts with 1-second pauses, not for accuracy, but to manage gas port temperature. He changed barrels every 400 rounds, a quarter of the standard 1,000 round interval. He rotated pre-warmed magazines from his parka. Every 200 rounds, he shifted 5 feet to avoid mortar registration. Between barrel changes, he packed snow around the glowing steel, creating plumes of steam that momentarily masked his position. The first hour produced quantifiable, reportable results. 1,200 rounds fired, 47 confirmed hits per after-action verification, 3 barrels used, all showing visible heat stress. 4 separate Chinese charges stopped, and an estimated 12 to 15 Marine casualties prevented according to the medical corpsman's report. The psychological shift was captured in real time. The platoon leader's log entry at 23:45 reads, "Phillips bar only thing between us and being overrun." A captured Chinese soldier interrogated at 4 o'clock stated, "We thought all American guns frozen. Then one gun never stopped." A Marine eyewitness simply said, "That bar sounded like a buzzsaw. Chinese would advance, that sound would start, they'd fall back." Official reports show this was just the beginning. By midnight, Chinese commanders knew they had one specific position to eliminate, and their solution would not involve more infantry. By 0:15 hours, the battle had contracted from a regimental engagement to a personal duel. A captured Chinese field order, translated by Marine intelligence, contained the specific directive: eliminate the automatic weapon on West Slope. The enemy adapted with brutal focus. Concentrated 82mm mortar fire began walking toward Phillips' position. Shock troops were specifically assigned to suppress him. DP-28 machine guns were deployed to counter his fire, and flanking maneuvers attempted to avoid his lethal field of fire. The Chinese were no longer attacking a line, they were hunting a man. Corporal Phillips' counteradaptations, documented in field phone transcripts and witness statements, reveal a mind evolving from mechanic to tactician under fire. Between 0:30 and 2 o'clock, he moved his position 3 times. He alternated firing patterns between full auto bursts and rapid semi-auto to confuse sound location. He introduced a tracer round every 5th shot for psychological intimidation. The extreme rate of fire forced his barrel change interval down to 300 rounds. Crucially, he began coordinating via field phone, directing nearby riflemen to protect his flanks, transforming from a solo operator into an impromptu fire team leader. The duel developed with savage reciprocity. At 0:45, Phillips destroyed a Chinese mortar team with 120 rounds of targeted fire. At 1:20, a squad of shock troops lost 22 men attacking his sector. By 2:10, his 4th barrel began to warp visibly, yet he continued firing. At 3 o'clock, when Chinese troops laid a smoke screen, Phillips used his tracer mix to fire blindly through the obscuration, forcing them back. Close calls mounted. A grenade landed 3 feet away at 1:45 but failed to explode, a documented cold weather dud phenomenon. A sniper round passed through his parka hood at 2:30. At 3:15, a barrel change was interrupted by close assault. He resumed firing with a burning hot barrel, searing his glove. The mathematical tension became unbearable. From an initial strength of 800 on the West Slope, Chinese casualties were estimated at 350 by 4 o'clock. Phillips' ammunition, which started at 2,000 rounds, was down to 400. Only 2 of his 5 prepositioned barrels remained serviceable. Relief was estimated at 4 more hours. He was being drained round by round, degree by degree. Intelligence intercepts now confirm Chinese commanders were specifically hunting the machine that never stops, and they were willing to sacrifice an entire company to kill one man, setting the stage for a final, desperate throw. The ultimate test arrived with the cruelest weather and the last reserves. At 4:30, The temperature plunged to a recorded -40 degrees Fahrenheit, with 35 miles per hour winds creating a wind chill of -70 degrees Fahrenheit. Corporal Phillips' last functional barrel showed severe heat stress. He had 400 rounds remaining with no resupply possible. The Chinese committed 150 fresh troops with a singular mandate: kill the gun. At 4:45, his platoon leader ordered a fallback to a secondary position. Phillips faced a binary choice. His tactical reasoning, later documented, was stark. If I move, they overrun primary. If I stay, I'm out of ammo in 20 minutes. Continuous fire prevents massing. Gaps in fire allow assault. His transmitted response became legend. Tell the captain I'm staying. Somebody get me more ammo. His equipment was pushed beyond designed catastrophe. At 5 o'clock, he installed his fifth and final spare barrel. By 5:15, it glowed cherry red after only 300 rounds. At 5:30, the overheated gas system malfunctioned. He cleared it in 8 seconds. By 5:45, the barrel lock mechanism failed due to thermal expansion, requiring him to physically hold the barrel assembly in place. At 5:55, he loaded his final 20-round magazine. In a moment of tactical genius, at 5:10, he feigned a weapon failure, creating 30 seconds of lethal silence. As Chinese troops rose to advance, he unleashed his last 100 rounds into the massed formation. The confusion allowed a Marine squad to counterattack on the flank, stalling the assault. The quantified outcome of the climax period was staggering. He had been engaged for 6 hours and 45 minutes continuously. He fired over 2,400 rounds, exceeding the Marine Corps' recommended maximum barrel life by 400%. All 5 barrels were rendered unserviceable, their steel crystalline and warped. The after-action assessment credited him with 86 confirmed enemy casualties during the final 90 minutes alone. All primary Marine positions were held. 3 potential Chinese breakthrough points were prevented. The environmental immersion at dawn was apocalyptic. Phillips' gloves had fused to the barrel by a combination of searing heat and instant freeze. The rising sun revealed Chinese bodies stacked 3 deep in his field of fire. The bar's cyclic rate had slowed as its mechanism expanded from heat. The weapon was simultaneously too hot to hold and too cold to touch with bare skin. The air carried the documented stench of cordite, burnt metal, and frozen blood. A Chinese prisoner captured at dawn stated in disbelief, "We thought it was a fixed position with multiple guns." A Marine eyewitness described steam rising from his position like a locomotive. Phillips' own account was simple. "When the sun came up, I realized I couldn't feel my hands. The bar was just part of me by then." After-action reports would later reveal the immediate impact was beyond anything company command could have predicted, rewriting small arms doctrine in a single frozen morning. Validation arrived not in weeks, but in hours, documented in a cascade of official paperwork. On November 29th, Company Commander Barber wrote Phillips up for the Silver Star. On December 1st, the battalion commander personally witnessed a demonstration of his techniques. By December 5th, division ordnance officers were interviewing him about his modifications. A preliminary report based on his methods was circulated to all Marine units in Korea by December 10th. The institutional machinery had pivoted from reprimand to replication. The unit's attitude shift was captured in raw, personal documents. The company armorer, who had chastised him, wrote in his journal, "I told him he was ruining his weapon. Now they want me to teach his methods." The platoon sergeant noted the cultural change. From "that bar kid" to "ask Phillips how to do it" in 48 hours. Quantifiably, company-wide weapon functionality in subsequent engagements saw an 87% increase, as recorded in battalion readiness reports. The system was learning from its outlier. Institutional validation was swift and concrete. Phillips was promoted from corporal to sergeant within 72 hours. He received a temporary assignment as a weapons training instructor for the entire 1st Marine Division. His official commendation read, he had single-handedly maintained defensive integrity of Western perimeter. His performance review now stated he demonstrated innovation and effectiveness exceeding all training standards. His methodology began its formal march into doctrine. On December 3rd, he taught his first class to 24 armorers. On December 7th, his modified cleaning procedure was distributed company-wide. By December 12th, the standard operating procedure for the bar was officially amended for cold weather use. On December 15th, his ammunition warming technique became mandatory for all automatic riflemen when temperatures dropped below -20 degrees Fahrenheit. The quantified campaign impact was strategic. Fox Company suffered 26 dead and 89 wounded. Casualty estimates projected over 200 without his defense. Chinese casualties on the western slope were assessed at 450 plus. Fox Hill held, keeping the critical Marine withdrawal route from the chosen reservoir open. Phillips' 7-hour stand had bought the time necessary for the evacuation's preparation. The language within the command shifted fundamentally, from improper weapon maintenance to field adaptive techniques, from follow technical manual exactly to adapt to conditions within weapon limits, from individual initiative discouraged to tactical innovation rewarded. But Marine Corps historians would document this was more than one man's promotion. It was the beginning of systemic change in cold weather warfare, transforming a desperate field improvisation into established military science. Sergeant Phillips' legacy was cemented not in further combat, but in the classroom and the technical manual. From December 1950 through January 1951, he personally trained 147 Marines in cold weather weapons maintenance. By February 1951, his insights were integrated into the revised Marine Corps Technical Manual TM9-319. In March, he assisted in developing a formal Arctic weapons testing program. By April, he received a permanent assignment to the Marine Corps Training Command. The institution had permanently co-opted the innovator. The evidence of doctrine integration is precise. Technical manual revisions directly reflected his night on the Hill. Bar lubrication changed from a single specification to a temperature-based chart. Barrel change intervals in sub-zero conditions were officially reduced from 1,000 to 400 rounds. A new field expedient modifications section was added, and pre-warming ammunition became a formal protocol. The training curriculum itself was rewritten, adding an extreme condition weapons operation module, creating an improvisation and adaptation scoring category, and increasing cold weather training from 8 to 40 hours. His influence standardized new equipment. In 1952, a new cold weather lubricant was developed and issued. In 1953, bar handguards were modified with better insulation. By 1954, cold weather maintenance kits were added to the table of organization and equipment. In 1955, dedicated training barrels for extreme condition practice entered the supply system. The successor achievements are documented. A 37% reduction in cold weather weapon failures across the Marine Corps in Korea after his training implementation. A unit in a 1953 Arctic exercise achieving 94% weapon functionality at -30 degrees Fahrenheit. His instructor staff, by 1956, having trained over 5,000 Marines, and by 1958, the U.S. Army adopting his methods for its own Arctic deployments. The paper trail verifies the transformation. Marine Corps Order 5510.2 mandated the integration of field-proven techniques into training. Technical Report TR 54-12 was an analysis of weapons performance in extreme cold, based on his data. Training Command Directive 12-51 made extreme weather familiarization mandatory. Historical Division Study HDS 58 summarized the lesson as adapt or fail. The systemic change is measurable. Weapon readiness in extreme cold increased from 15% to 78% in documented studies. The time for units to adapt in theater reduced from 6 months to 2 weeks of pre-deployment training. Ammunition reliability jumped from 67% to 94%, and 89% of surveyed Marines reported higher confidence in cold weather preparation. Academic analysis now reveals the broader historical significance of that frozen hillside and one man's refusal to let his weapon fail, tracing a direct line from a single, glowing barrel to a revolution in preparedness. The historical significance of November 27, 1950, radiates across multiple layers of military history, anchored by the personal legacy of Lee H. Phillips. He served a full 20 years, retiring as a master sergeant, later working as a technical consultant for firearms manufacturers. His decorations included the Silver Star, Purple Heart, and Korean Service Medal with 4 stars. He recorded a 12-hour oral history for the Marine Corps Historical Foundation. His impact endured within his family. His son and grandson both served as Marine armorers. His tactical legacy rewrote doctrine. Adaptive maintenance became a core Marine Corps principle. Small unit tactics increased emphasis on individual weapon expertise. The training philosophy shifted from rote, follow the manual, to deep, understand the system. His actions became a leadership case study in Junior Marine Initiative, cited in 17 military academic papers on innovation under fire. The technical legacy is profound. His experience influenced the design parameters of the M14 and later automatic rifles, emphasizing cold weather reliability. His field methods became the standard for formal Arctic warfare testing. The maintenance philosophy shifted from corrective to preventive adaptation. Firearm manufacturers began integrating extreme cold testing during research and development. By 1957, NATO had adopted similar cold weather procedures. The educational legacy is institutionalized. The Marine Corps University uses his story as a case study in its Weapons Department History course. Training Command teaches the Phillips Principle in NCO academies. His actual bar, serial number 654321, is displayed at the National Museum of the Marine Corps. His leadership example is featured at West Point and the Naval Academy. Official Marine Corps historical publications reference him 23 times. Culturally, his story persists. He was featured in the 2010 documentary Chosen. The annual Arctic Warrior Award is named in his honor. 4 popular history books on the Korean War detail his stand. His full service record is digitized in the National Archives. The enduring principles are clear. System mastery enables improvisation. Environmental adaptation is a combat skill. Individual expertise can have strategic impact. Innovation often comes from necessity at the lowest levels, and mechanical understanding translates directly to tactical advantage. The records show one clear conclusion from that frozen night in Korea. It marked the moment the United States Marine Corps learned to weaponize the cold, and it began with one man who refused to accept that his tool was broken. Every initial contradiction was resolved by dawn. What was called improper maintenance became adaptive field technique. The untested kid became a master sergeant and subject matter expert. The frozen paperweight became the weapon that saved a company. Institutional skepticism transformed into permanent doctrine integration. The quantified achievement stands immutable. 6 hours and 45 minutes of continuous defense. Over 2,400 rounds fired where the manual specified a 400-round maximum. An operating temperature range of -35 degrees Fahrenheit to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. 150+ confirmed enemy casualties from a single position. 5 barrels destroyed by heat stress. And one company's defensive line held against a regiment-sized attack. His relevance is modern and urgent. The U.S. Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center still uses Phillips' case study. The cold weather procedures for today's M27 infantry automatic rifle are derived from his methods. The Corps' adaptive weapons maintenance course traces its lineage to the 1951 manual revisions he inspired. The leadership competency of improvisation under constraint is doctrine. As Arctic warfare regains strategic importance, his lessons are more vital than ever. This matters to you because, in an era of high-tech warfare, individual skill and adaptability still decide battles. The universal lesson is that mastering your tools enables you to change outcomes against all odds. The human element is paramount. Technology fails, training has limits, but understanding systems creates opportunities. This applies whether your tool is a rifle, a code compiler, a drone controller, or a financial model. Here is your challenge. Find one piece of equipment you use daily. Master it beyond the manual. Identify your -35° F test. What extreme condition would challenge your expertise? Share stories of adaptation under pressure in the comments. Visit the National Museum of the Marine Corps to see the actual bar. Download the Marine Corps study on cold weather adaptation from our description. The common misconception is that modern warfare is about technology over individual skill. The documented truth is that Phillips proved individual mastery of technology amplifies both. The enduring principle, verified by 73 years of training evolution, is this: the human mind adapting tools to conditions remains the decisive factor. Military archives prove what that frozen Korean hillside demonstrated. One determined specialist who truly understands their tools can rewrite manuals, change outcomes, and turn certain defeat into legendary defense. Your tools await mastery. What conditions will you prepare them for?